I'll now call on Alan Direnfeld. Come on up, Alan.
Madam Mayor, members of council, as always, it's a pleasure to speak with you and to meet with you. And I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of all of the Lake Drive owners for taking the time to pursue this to the extent that you have and for arranging for this evening. I think it's extremely helpful.
You just give us your municipal address, just for the record.
329 Lake Drive East.
Thank you. Welcome.
So, to begin with, you know, the concept of are we buying or selling, I think has to be pushed off the table. What we're doing is quieting the title. So for 70 years, myself and my predecessors in title have been occupying exclusively that bit of property that's on the other side of the road from my cottage. From my perspective, I own it. You want to know if I pay taxes on it? It matters not whether or not there's a separate assessment. My assessment is based on the purchase price I paid for the cottage. I paid for the cottage based on the exclusive use of the waterfront, and consequently I paid a price that was higher than someone would have paid for the same piece of property without access to the water. So I'm paying the taxes on it. I have been since I bought this piece in 2003, and my predecessors in title have been paying it for 70 years. So I don't view myself as buying any piece of property from the town. I view this as an opportunity for the town and I to straighten out title at a cost that I will incur. I'll pay to fix it. I'll pay to straighten it out. In the meantime, over $25,000 has been spent on the waterfront, installing rocks, reclaiming lake bed with consents, all that sort of thing. And so I know that my waterfront is very, very small when you measure from the shoulder to the property prior to its infill. And so to go out and spend the money on an appraisal is a little oddball for me. I understand that the town wants to justify the approach, wants to cover its rear end. I get it. But there are circumstances in life where it's just obviously not necessary. In this particular instance, you can't sell it to anybody else. You're going to have an easement over the entire property. I can't do anything with it. I'm limited as to any kind of fencing or hedging that I could possibly put up. All I really want to do is to be able to lawfully insure it. So if somebody steps off the end of my property, slips on a rock and cracks their head, I'm covered. And the town doesn't have to worry about that coverage because it's my responsibility. And when the water starts to wash away the grounds, I'll protect it. That's my assumption of responsibility and expense, for which I do not expect to buy from the town. I expect the town to convey it to me at nominal value, and I will pay the cost of getting it done. I'm betting that almost everybody in this room is feeling the same way. I don't know how I get that inclination, but I believe that to be the case. And I think that you'll find that that's an indication of who's likely to show up at a public meeting. It won't be the people who live in Pefferlaw who have never seen the waterfront and don't use it. It'll be the people who have been using it and who have invested in it and who pay the taxes and who endeavor to insure it all of these years. So I'm not impressed with the prospect of an appraisal. My property has a culvert that runs out from the ditch on the dry side of the road. Is that going to be taken into account when you average out the appraisals? I doubt it. And the reason I doubt it is because the appraisal process that you're considering is one of looking at 3 or 4 properties out of hundreds and then averaging a price per square meter. It's a flawed process. And so I think you're going to find difficulty in using it as a justification for value. In fact, I think it'll give skewed values. I don't know whether they'll be high, I don't know whether they'll be low, but they'll be skewed because they won't be reflective of anything. I have the greatest respect for Andrew Biggert. I appreciate him as a good lawyer. I've worked with Andrew Biggert in the past and with his firm. I'm also a lawyer of 41 years, so I have some experience under my belt as well. And I know that wasting money to get to an end is not the way to get to the end. If you have appraisals that are essentially unjustifiable and not reflective of actual values, and I point out that in Mr. Bigert's letter, he says the way to get to the actual value is through these appraisals. They're not actual value. They're not reflective of my property. So I think it's kind of a waste of time. And I agree with Mr. Grossi and Mr. Polini and Dave Neeson and Mike. You know, there's no point in wasting the money. We should cut right to the chase. The other thing is that I appeared on the ad hoc committee a number of years ago. All of these processes really flow from the recommendations, save and except for the concept of appraisals. You know, and like they say at Nike, we should just do it. It's really a waste of everybody's time. So my suggestion is that we simply move forward with the proposal that the properties have their titles quieted and that it be at the cost of the taxpayer, the individual taxpayer, the owner of the lands on the other side of the lake, and that they incur that cost. Sorry, I'm just collecting my thoughts on another aspect. I've represented a number of property owners along Lake Drive in the acquisition of properties. I can tell you that some people absolutely own them. I can tell you that there are numerous people, and it's going to be more than 10%, who have something the equivalent of quitclaim deeds, which falls really in the direction that Mr. Grossi was talking about. And that is that there are bits of land that were on the other side of the road that don't really fall into what I would consider to be the road allowances measured, and that additionally would have been part of the lands owned by the subdivider prior to the road being put through the plans of subdivision along the waterfronts. And that would include near my property and others. But I know for a fact that there are areas of Lake Drive North, and because I've worked on them and I've been working with the Land Registry Office to address those titles, where the titles have been quitclaimed to the property owners on the other side of the road. And although land titles won't convert it into the land titles process, the registry office is still accepting written deeds to transfer those titles and interests. And I can tell you that because I registered one in the last 2 weeks, and I'm working on another one right now, and I will get it registered too. So again, this goes right back to the question of what are you selling? And the truth is you're not selling anything. You're working with us to quiet the titles so that people don't have to go to court and argue that they own it. You're going to have a large group here who's willing to pay the cost to get this thing cleaned up and to offload liability from the town. And that's really what it's all about. And I love the concept that Mr. Grossi and that Ted Rotenberg were speaking about the buy-in. You want to get this done. The town wants to get this done. The town needs to get this done. And the only way it's going to get done is if you do it at a value that works. And I want to mention something about beach associations. I've had this discussion with members of council. The use of incorporated not-for-profits doesn't work. You know, I know lots of people who live on the side streets and use beach association type end of road beaches. They're not equipped to be members of a corporation, to file annual records, to file tax returns, to report to government, and then every time it changes, somebody has to be in charge of changing the membership of the not-for-profit corporation. It doesn't work. It won't. In my office. There's no way in the world it's going to work with a bunch of strangers who are not familiar necessarily with this sort of ownership or rights. And I repeat the suggestion I've made through Mr. Bigert that that there be a licensing program put into place and a bylaw that says, those people who are members or who are residents of a particular road can acquire the licenses. You can charge $20 a year if you want on the tax to administer it and to ensure that the town covers that property with insurance because there will be a tax, and that's okay. Now, the last thing is, the stick as opposed to the carrot. The what happens if you don't buy in? For me, that's coercion. That's like saying, I can set a high price because all hell will break loose on these people if they don't buy in. So whatever price I set is the price they're going to pay, and if they don't pay, I'll either put up a fence, or I'll take away their docks, or I won't allow them to access. That's ridiculous. I think the word was bunk. That's absolute bunk. It'll never happen. So make it possible for people to buy in. Don't coerce them to buy in. Encourage them to buy in. You'll get a much better result, a faster result, more efficient result, and if I may add, a happier electorate. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.